Welcome also to my guest joining me all this morning, Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning to you. Good morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, it seems strange with you, given your job and the things that we often talk about, to be talking about a pop star. But I mean, look, we're not talking about Elvis Presley's, John Lennon, these major world musical icons. But Liam Payne was unbelievably successful. A lot of people, I think, if you're on my age, might be forgiven to not realise quite how successful the boy band he was in, One Direction, was. Just so unbelievably huge. They were the biggest boy band of their time. They sold many tens of millions of records, huge icons for a whole generation of young people, both girls and boys. 4 million #1 albums, numerous #1 singles. I'm saying, for my sins, I've seen them live 3 times. Once from backstage, which is very nice, but again, paid for my tickets, I'd like to point out, paid for my tickets. Incredibly sad news when anyone young dies, particularly in these circumstances. A young man, rich, famous, good-looking, beautiful girlfriend, everything on the face of it, all good in his life. 31 years old, though. Police called to the hotel he was staying in Argentina, in the capital, Buenos Aires, after reports of a man basically being very loud and threatening and out of control on, they believed, alcohol or drugs. This was believed to be Liam Payne. And then when the police were there, a loud noise heard, and he has fallen from a 3rd floor balcony outside his room, died instantly identified, particularly, of course, by his very distinctive tattoos. Obviously, there was an investigation into whether he fell or whether he deliberately killed himself. That would be a big concern for people. But we know, that he'd had a difficult breakup with a previous girlfriend. This is all in the public eye. But the issue here for me is that we know he'd had issues with fighting drink and drugs. We know he'd battled with his mental health. And we see this again and again in so many young stars. So many, across the board. There's actors, actresses, pop stars, anyone who's in the public eye from a young age. He was first on TV at the age of 14, for goodness sake. He was literally a child. I was just saying to Mike, fame is really bad for you. Fame is really, really difficult for people to cope with. Riches at a very young age, really difficult to cope with, but particularly when they start so young. What are your things? You're a dad. When you hear these stories, what are your first thoughts?
I'm shocked. Anyone so young, no matter how they die, there's something is going wrong somewhere. Yeah. And he did the X Factor. I think when he was 16, as he went through. He is a massive influencer. I came down on the train this morning and through the tube. 80 to 90% of the conversations I heard people having were all about Liam Payne. Yeah. He's an influencer, and his mental health problems have been well known. But that's great. We know he's got mental health problems. What support?
It's good that he was open about it.
Well, yes, but what support was he getting? Yeah. And for those that brought him into this level of fame at the age of 16, because One Direction was a manufactured boy band.
I mean, these were 5 singers who came into the. I mean, I remember we watched X Factor avidly, as awful. I mean, millions did at that time, and they were put together, by the show. By Simon Cowell as a possible. And what's interesting, of course, they didn't win X Factor that year. Yeah. They came second.
And whenever you bring someone in, even when they turn 18 and they've got that level of fame, that level of money and all the rest of it, there's a duty of care. There has to be. Yeah. And you see it with young footballers and their behaviour. You see it with young pop stars. You see it across the board. And
child stars in Hollywood.
Exactly. And if that duty of care is not exercised, then people are just using them to abuse them for money. And that's wrong. That's child abuse. Even if they're 18, you're touching on that level of child abuse. So I think other people need to take responsibility and look long and hard at how they provide support.
And again, we've reports, his parents, didn't see him for months and months and months on end at a very young age because he was off. Now look, you'd have fought alongside and been in the military alongside very young men women who are often away from home for a long period of time in really difficult circumstances. I mean, genuinely life-threatening circumstances, and we understand the impact of post-traumatic stress disorder there. And we sort of think of these young men. Well, they're living the dream. I mean, girls, flocking to them. Riches beyond their wildest dreams in these wonderful hotels. It's all very glamorous and all very exciting. People taking a photo and everyone wants to touch you and be you and know you. But actually, that means you can't trust anybody. And that means that you kind of don't have any of your soul left. And also, it's no good for anyone's ego. Even if you're, even if you're 80, you've been around for years, having people sort of go, oh, you're wonderful, you're wonderful. It's really bad for people not to be grounded. And we've seen, look, pop star after pop star. Look, Robbie Williams has been really open. Recent documentary, I think it was on Netflix. It's a wonderful documentary about, the trials and tribulations he's gone through. But the inability to trust anyone around you. Now, at least if you're in a band, perhaps you've got people to trust. And also when these bands break up, often actually that's when things can go wrong. But again, you just sort of feel, is this something that we should, as a society, as a world, be encouraging? That actually, I wouldn't let my child anywhere near that world. Even if she was unbelievably talented, I'd be like, this is not a safe world to be in.
We should be encouraging people to talk about it more. And hats off to the young royals. Both Prince William and Prince Harry have been champions of mental health issues.
And they didn't get a choice about the world they were brought up in. And they didn't get a choice. Putting this into context, I can be even more personal. I was a senior officer in the military and I had very severe mental health problems. People who I was interacting with on a daily basis saw the front. I could put the front on. Everyone thought I was perfectly normal. There was nothing that was there, but everything was falling apart in the background. And we don't know that he committed suicide, but I was in a position on several occasions where something I could just flipped like that, it could have
and would have been gone. I was in that sort of mental state.
And that's very brave of you to talk about, and it's very difficult, particularly for men, to talk about these things.
Yeah, and it's important that we bring that out because it is more prevalent in society, and it's not just the pop stars and elsewhere. It's more prevalent in society than people admit. And I put it down. I'm very lucky. The NHS picked me up. Ministry of Defence, Army, no. NHS picked me up, sorted me out, and I described I got proper me back. But that proper me is a different me to the me beforehand. It's probably a better me, and I understand things more. But we should treat this, you're like getting a cold or getting a flu. You talk about that. I've got a cold
it shouldn't be your own whole identity.
No. And you shouldn't have to keep it hidden.
Yeah, exactly. And this thing also with the drink and drugs thing as well, and it's something Robbie Williams spoke about in his documentary, which is, people will just give you the drugs because it's the only way of getting you on stage. And there's, there are hundreds of people, on your entourage who rely on you getting on stage. Everyone needs to get paid. There's tens of thousands of people waiting out there for you to go on, and basically everyone goes for the quick fix, and you can't let people down, and that gets tied into it as well. People feel they can't so just walk away from it. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on all this. Maybe you've had friends or family or yourself maybe been touched by this. People who ostensibly have these perfect, wonderful, amazing lives. And by the way, also let's remember, he was with Cheryl Cole, who was actually one of the judges on X Factor, and had a baby with him. He's got a 7-year-old son called Bear. Got big question marks about the name of the child, but as pop stars. But a 7-year-old lad has just lost his father. And I do. One of the things I really get annoyed about fans sort of weeping and wailing. It's like, can we just think about let's think about the family, let's think about the parents and the
exactly.
It's not
the fans' loss, it's the family loss.
It's the family loss. I think that, and the band members, they've grown up together. They're probably feel like they're brothers. And we know he was actually in Buenos Aires to see a concert of one of his former band members, Niles. So there is still a close relationship there. But if you've been sort of touched by this, and I don't mean you're a Liam Payne fan or a 1D fan. I mean, just seeing people who just feel like they can't cope with the life that they are kind of in, that they may be chosen, but then can't get off the treadmill. Whether it's a high-level job or even just it's a job that's ostensibly not glamorous, but someone who's like a nurse or a paramedic or in the military and not being able to cope with that and not perhaps getting the support that you need. I'd be really interested to hear from you today. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I also want to hear from you on this other topic we want to talk about, and this is this surge in Channel migrants. More have arrived obviously over the summer than arrived before in the first 6 months this year. Not a surprise. They tend to come over, don't they, during the summer months. When the weather's good. Let's face it, all of the policy changes in the last few years, none of them have made any difference. The only thing that makes difference to the number of people coming to this country on those Channel migrant boats is weather. It's really that simple. But the surge in Channel migrants could force the government to reopen the asylum hotels, which, of course, they said they would close, saving billions of pounds for taxpayers. It was a pledge in the manifesto. It was literally a press in the manifesto to say that they would actually close down these hotels. Is that they would end asylum hotels, saving the taxpayer billions of pounds. Well, they're not going to be able to do that. They're going to have to get thousands of extra hotel beds, partly because, of course, they don't actually have the space in private housing. They've been, the last government of this government, buying up, landlords to rent out, to rent properties for years on end. I mean, I'd love to know people's reaction to this. Give us a call on this as well, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and then your message to 87222. You can get in touch on X at TalkTV. Don't forget, of course, that calls are charged at a national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Twitter, X is free. And, of course, YouTube, you can have a look at our YouTube page at the bottom of that, put a message, and that's for free too. I'd love to get all your thoughts on there. But Philip, I mean, I feel like the migrant issue, that is never going to end, and you can smash the gangs, stop the boats, all the pledges we've heard from politicians, none of it is working. Yeah.
And, well, none of it's working, and none of these new initiatives that the government brought in are actually really new initiatives.
Yeah.
They are a relabelling of things that have been going on beforehand.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're long-term things. They're unlikely to have any impact whatsoever in this Parliament. And they've appointed Martin Hewitt as the new head of the Border Security Command, part of the National Crime Agency, this new £75 million organisation that is there to smash the gangs and everything else. He's turned around and said we need a deterrent.
Yeah, he said smashing the gangs isn't going to be enough.
And then what do we see the EU doing? The EU is going, oh, now that the UK is not using Rwanda looks good and we can have an EU deterrent to Rwanda. Italy is using Albania as a deterrent.
Given that the government was criticised by many Labour-supporting commentators as being a fascist government for wanting to send people to Rwanda to be processed, and also if they won asylum to stay in Rwanda, I mean, presumably they think the EU is a fascist organisation too.
Oh, must do. The logic's there. Without a deterrent, people are going to go, hey, the door's open, we're going to come in.
You're living in a camp, you're living in a tent by the side of the road in Calais. And you get on a boat, 2-3 grand. I think the price is going down.
Yep.
That tells you there's quite a lot of competition for those places. And more people going for it, but there are also more boats, or more people offering that service. And you get here, you're going to get put in a hotel. What's not to like?
Yeah, well, and the other headline that's coming out today is, Keir Starmer's about to announce that 60,000 are going to be granted asylum. They're the ones that were to go to Rwanda and can't go to Rwanda because it's been
Yes, but the point here, Philip, surely, have you not read the memo, is that the key thing is we need to deal with the backlog. Now, if dealing with the backlog, Keir Starmer thinks is just granting it. That's not what the public thought.
And that becomes an incentive.
Deal with the backlog and ship them out.
Yeah, and that becomes an incentive for more to come.
You're here for a few years, put up in a hotel, and eventually they'll give up and they'll let you stay. Ta-da!
But the budget's going to put all our taxes up, and their taxes are going up by a proportion to help pay for this.
Well, exactly. I mean, it is a big cost. We were asking people yesterday, what would you cut, what would you tax more? And everyone's going, the net zero, but also the cost of dealing with the migrants. And again, this is something that the whole of EU is battling with. I just worry that when the Prime Minister says he wants to work with the EU on this, what that means is we'll just take a collection of their failed asylum seekers too, rather than just say, OK, we're going to ship ours back to you. Can I ask you, though, you mentioned about the taxes. The budget yesterday will have been sent to the Office for Budget Responsibility for them to sort of OK the figures and say, well, do things add up? This is something, of course, that Labour rightly criticised Liz Truss for not having checked before, with her disastrous budget that brought her government down after 49 days in total in office. But we're also now hearing lots of criticism, of course, about this likely national insurance rise for employers, a breach of the manifesto pledge, as the Institute of Fiscal Studies is saying. Now the Institute of Directors, representing 20,000 bosses, largely more sort of bigger businesses, but nevertheless 20,000 different companies, say that hiking national insurance for employers will become Labour's poll tax. They're saying there's so much anger about this. Now, not as much anger as there is about the winter fuel allowance being scrapped. 70% of people think the government made the wrong decision on that, according to the latest poll. But do you think it could be Rachel Reeves' poll tax? Oh,
yes, and I have to declare I'm a member of the Institute of Directors, so I think it can be. But Rachel Reeves thinks it could be her poll tax if we look back to what she said. In 2021, she criticised the Tory government, and I'm quoting here, the Conservative government's actions will make each new recruit more expensive and increase the costs to business.
Yeah.
That's what she said when the Tories were suggesting.
And incredibly, Rishi Sunak didn't use this as a line against the Prime Minister at PMQs yesterday, which I thought was quite. Maybe he's just saving it for the budget.
Well, I think it's a good one to save for the budget and everything else. So it's hypocritical. What we're seeing with the asylum seekers, what we're seeing with the tax on private schools and some of the other taxes are politically driven points that Labour have said they want to achieve for political reasons. It's not economic.
No,
exactly. There's nothing going to sort the country out.
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of these stories. Lots of different topics we're talking about.